We're so glad you're here, and we're excited to learn from you and with you today in this very first of our Sprint Series session. Our focus in this session is going to be on social justice and learning experience design. We'll be recording the main portion of this workshop for those who are unable to attend in real time, but none of the breakout sessions will be recorded. And then to support your processing today, we've created a participant notebook which you can make a copy of using the link that is displayed on the slide and also shared in the chat. You're also welcome to do this on paper if you prefer. So please take a moment now, if you don't mind, to set that up by following one of these links, and you can either make a copy or download the document. All right, so as you are doing that, we want to thank you again for joining us. I know that folks are continuing to trickle in as we get started here. If you feel comfortable, we would appreciate it if you would take a few moments to share with us anonymously about your social justice and learning experience design experiences, so we can incorporate that into our conversations today. So a poll should be visible to you, which you can now fill out if you feel comfortable.
I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. It looks like we've gotten a good number of people in.
So if we're reviewing that, it looks like we're going to grow in our comfort together here today and look at when we're chatting, we'll really focus on being intentional and thinking about how we work in networks and systems with a diverse human population that also perceives and has different experiences with social justice work than we do.
All right, thank you. So as we get started, we are faculty from two programs at Michigan State University, and those programs are the Master of Arts in Learning Experience Design, or MALXD, and the MA in Educational Technology, or MAET. My name is Liz Boltz, and I am the director of these programs. And with me are...
I'm Candace Robertson. Pronouns are she, her. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Experience and Outreach.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brittany Dillman, also use she, her pronouns, and I am the director of our graduate certificate programs within the master's programs. Today, this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever you are, our agenda items are to establish norms, purpose, and goals, to consider challenges with social justice and learning experience design that we'll use breakout rooms for, to explore design principles, to create a design justice plan and apply frameworks, and continue to learn in some breakout rooms toward the end. We are going to be grounded in our community engagement framework in this next hour with each other, which stems from the belief that social justice matters, that we can work through discomfort, that we are all co-learners, that this is part of a bigger journey. We're not going to answer everything in the next hour, unfortunately, that we're going to move up and move back, particularly in the breakout rooms. If you notice that you've been speaking a lot, if you can move back for someone else to come and speak a little bit more, that would be great. And we're also going to acknowledge that all of us bring expertise, and that is fantastic. And we will use those to further our collective knowledge and practices. If there are any other norms that you would like to have included, please go ahead and drop those in the chat. While those are coming in, we want to be explicit in naming our positionality. We are privileged white women, and we acknowledge that as white women, it is our responsibility to unlearn and actively work against white supremacy. And in designing this session, we were intentional about amplifying the important work that has already been done in the areas of social justice and learning experience design, as well as centering experiences from folks from historically marginalized communities. Our role here today is to not be the sage on the stage, but to listen and facilitate, as this is a journey for us too. So we acknowledge our own privileges, we amplify the work, and we listen and facilitate. Our goals for today are to help you identify strategies for integrating social justice when planning learning experiences, to identify tools for recognizing our places and roles in promoting social justice, to identify ways to promote social justice and equity through learning experience design, to develop encouragement and supports for this work, and to develop our understanding of the intersection of learning experience design and social justice.
So it's important to start with definitions. What do we mean by social justice? It's broad. It can be very personal. It can be very communal. So we'll start with this definition from the UN from 2020, and that is social justice is an underlying principle for peaceful and prosperous coexistence within and among nations. We uphold the principles of social justice when we promote gender equality or the rights of Indigenous peoples and migrants. We advance social justice when we remove barriers that people face because of gender, age, race, ethnicity, religion, culture, or disability. And again, that's from the United Nations in 2020. You will notice in this session that we will be reading from the slides quite often, and that is part of our accessibility practice, just to name that. So, learning experience design can encompass quite a lot. It's interdisciplinary, it is broad, it can be messy. We're interested in how you define it. So we would ask that you now go to your participant notebook, which Candace has again linked in the chat, and just reflect a little bit about what learning experience design means for you. On the right of this slide is an infographic that includes a whole bunch of possible words that folks have used to describe various aspects of learning experience design. But what does it mean to you? So we'll pause for a moment and allow you to do that. Okay, so if you want to wrap up your thoughts, we'll move on. Brittany, you're muted.
Friends, it would not be a post-2020 Zoom if sometimes somebody didn't do that. My apologies. This is Brittany, and just to reiterate, design has the power to reinforce or disrupt inequity. And the ways that design broadly intersects with social justice are things like public benches that are designed to prevent folks from laying down because they have arm dividers or little bumps on them, or the size of airplane seats, or automatic soap dispensers that don't necessarily register all skin tones. Disability aging and universal design for living spaces, the types of hygiene projects that are provided for free in public restrooms, and pronouns and identity options that are included in medical forms. So now that we have you in that sort of mindset, why does social justice matter in learning experience design? And we're going to argue that ed tech can be a predatory place and has kind of a bad track record, that AI is steeped in digital colonialism, ableism, accessibility, and UDL are challenges, and surveillance capitalism is with us all the time. And we want to help you be aware of these so that you can push back against them in your own contexts. What we would like for you to do is head back over to your participant notebook and just reflect for a minute on why does social justice and learning experience design matter to you today, right now. We'll give you a minute to think on that.
Right. So we know that these are some common social justice and design challenges. We've hosted this workshop in the past, and so we've collected this list from participants that have been a part of this. And some of the challenges that we face are those that you've reflected on in the beginning of the session, which are how to be intentional, how to know what's appropriate and what is not, and how that changes based on context, how to leverage our own privilege, how to address bias, and how to work with a variety of different types of human beings. So now comes part of the participatory and collaborative part of this workshop, which is we are going to ask you, we're going to put you in breakout rooms. What we'd like you to do is briefly introduce yourselves. You only have 5 minutes, so try to keep those as brief as possible. And then brainstorm some considerations for design. So thinking about those challenges that were on the previous slide and that we asked about at the beginning of the session, how might someone address those challenges? And then document those takeaways in your notebook. So we will give you some processing time once you're in those groups to get started and to think about this.
All right, I'm going to send you all over. Go ahead and click the blue button to join. Welcome back, everyone. I hope we can assume that by the fact that most of you came back at the very last second, that there were some good conversations happening, and thanks for the nonverbals to confirm that. As we have named some challenges, now we want to consider some elements of design that can help you address those challenges. So this is the design principles and me section. And we would like for you to take another minute and to review the design principles in your participant notebook and commit to one for this session. Hopefully you will be so enthralled by all of them that you'll have a hard time choosing. Liz, can you go back to the challenges slide? The challenges are also listed in the chat. Liz, slide 13.
There we go. And as a heads up, you have access to all of these slides as well. So if you need to jump around at any point, please feel free. And these are a resource for you to take with you after this session as well.
All right, while you are still in your participant notebook, we are going to guide you to the second part. And this is sort of a Mad Lib style activity for you. And so we'd love for you to draft a statement of commitment and an initial plan to enact that. Again, we're going to give you more details of how you're going to do this, but we want to get you thinking first. So we'll give you a couple minutes to do that. All right. Hopefully you have some good ideas and we're just going to keep adding to them and making them stronger.
All right, so now that you have those ideas in mind, we're going to apply a number of different lenses to look at these challenges. So, frameworks. This is a popular topic in academia, but we're interested in how do we make this actually work. So a framework, the idea of a framework is to provide a systematic approach to guide processes and decision making. It's an abstraction, and like any abstraction, a framework or any one framework is rarely going to be enough to encompass all the complexity and nuance of human nature. So we acknowledge that. But as educators, designers, and innovators and citizens, we can leverage frameworks and models to support the work that we do. Frameworks and checkpoints can also provide some helpful guidelines and some antidotes for invisible privilege. For those of us who have a fair amount of privilege, it's really important that we build in these checkpoints to be aware of that privilege and how it's impacting our work. So we've established two frameworks so far, our community engagement framework, which was the norms that we talked about at the beginning of the session. And we're also talking about design justice network principles, which we'll address in a minute. We're going to address a few more frameworks for you to consider when you're thinking about the intersection of learning experience design and social justice. And if you have others that you are aware of that you love, we would super appreciate hearing from you about those. So please feel free to share those in the chat. We're going to start with design thinking, which is a pretty popular and well-known model from the Stanford Design School. It's a pretty established approach to design work. If we look at this image, there are a series of hexagonal shapes. They start with the empathize phase, move into define, and then ideate, prototype, and test. So these are different phases that you work through with design thinking. It's not necessarily linear in the fashion that it's presented here. It usually involves a lot of iteration, but this is just kind of a basic overview of what design thinking is all about. So the design thinking framework is established and widely used, but as the organization Equity Meets Design suggests, that design thinking model might need to evolve and probably should evolve to better prioritize social justice. They write that we must redesign the design thinking process, mindsets, and tools themselves to ensure that they mitigate for the causes of inequity, the prejudices of the human designers in the process, both their explicit and implicit personal biases, and the power of mostly invisible status quo systems of oppression. So the liberatory design, the equity meets design framework, and the integrative design approaches expand and add nuance to existing models and frameworks like this design thinking framework.
So this is Brittany, and I want to talk you through the integrative design framework. This is by both Rumani and Chang, published in 2022. The image on the right of this slide has 4 circles that I'm going to talk you through. And there's like one on the top, one in the middle, and then one kind of down on each side. And the circles are on top of a gray circle behind it, which kind of encompasses all of it. So the integrative design process is going to involve human-centered decision and design, systems thinking, programmatic strategy, and equity and anti-racism. So let's dive a little bit into each of these. So human-centered design is action-oriented, deeply human, and experimental. We are putting humans first when we do the design. Sometimes as designers, it is easy to center ourselves. That may not be how we want to approach things. And we're going to really think about who our learners are and what they bring to our design spaces. The next circle is the systems thinking. And this is how organizations and schools and departments and corporations function and the bigger pieces at play, how people communicate, the culture, the processes, the policies. And in integrative design, the systems thinking is an analytical, relationship-oriented experience, and it's holistic. And depending on where you are in an organization, you may have a lot of power to be able to influence that, or you may have less. But from this framework, we're going to consider that in our design. The next element is programmatic strategy. This would be my personal favorite. This is the logical, procedural stuff of how to make things happen and how to make things happen better. It's going to be aligned with the systems thinking, and it really brings things to life in our design and in our actions. We would often say that programmatic strategy isn't particularly sexy, but it is the logical foundation for making a good, solid, social just design happen. And it is logical and helps organizations align with activities and existing resources and outcomes. And then in the center of this all is the equity and anti-racism practice. This is going to ground the team's work with the intention to commit to reduce inequity and confront and dismantle discrimination and oppression. And I don't think it is at all lost on us that this is in the center of this framework, because that is what all of these other pieces are trying to help make happen. So what we'd like you to do is take a second to reflect on the integrative design framework and how might you use it? Did any part of that framework spark anything for you? Is there something you're already doing well that you want to make sure to acknowledge and keep going? So take a minute and think about what you're processing right now. right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. So the next framework we're going to explore is Liberatory Design by Anasi, Clifford, Wise, Carey, and MALXD. So this is an image from the Liberatory Design deck, which is a free resource, which I would encourage you to check out. We'll provide a link to that in the resources section of this presentation. This shows a modified version of design thinking. It includes all the steps that we discussed before, represented as colorful hexagons: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And then in the middle is an additional hexagon divided in two. The top part reads notice, and the bottom part reads reflect. So liberatory design encourages designers to spend much more time noticing and reflecting. This means noticing and reflecting on our own identities, values, privileges, biases, and assumptions. It also means noticing and responding to the ways that systems of oppression are impacting our context. The notice phase helps us develop self-awareness and social emotional awareness before we try to empathize. So the empathize phase of design thinking is extremely important. It allows us to think about our users, but if we make assumptions about our users being very similar to us, we can run into issues with not designing in equitable ways. So our common discourse of urgency and business unusual, and for those of us who are working in today's world, we are probably very familiar with this. We don't have a whole lot of time built in for reflection, and it's not really rewarded, at least not explicitly. So the reflect phase asks us to consider our actions, our emotions, the impact that we have as designers. And this is intended to be an ongoing and transparent part of this design thinking process. Liberatory design folks call these equity pauses. So there's strategic checkpoints. It's time that's built into your process to reflect on the language we're using, the ideas that we have and where they're coming from, and maybe questioning our assumptions. So liberatory design asks us to return over and over again to this question: what evidence do you have that you are becoming more self-aware and more accountable as an equity-focused designer? So with that thought in mind, we ask you to return to your participant notebook and respond in your preferred method to the question: how does the liberatory design framework impact my design justice plan? And we will give you a minute to work on that.
Thanks, everyone, for that reflection. And just like Oprah used to say, you get a framework, you get a framework, you get a framework. We've got one more that we want to share with you. This is the Equity Meets Design framework. The way they write it is equity, then the letter X, and then design, but it's read Equity Meets Design. And so this framework, I kind of see it as overlapping triangles that look like trees. If the right side of the screen is the bottom, but I think it is more intended to be like flashlights. So there's three main ideas on the left, and that sort of illuminates about 5 or 6 things on the right, and I'll talk you through it. So with the Equity Meets Design framework, collaborative folks, they have 3 central tenets that they believe in: historical context, or seeing; radical inclusion, or being seen; and process as product, or foreseeing. So because they have these three beliefs and would encourage you all to, and me and my colleagues as well, that's going to require us to do some different things. So because we believe in historical context, we are going to design at the margins, making sure that we're thinking about people who have not been traditionally included. We're also going to start with ourselves and reflect on stuff, not unlike some of the other frameworks have suggested. Starting with ourself is an overlap of the other belief or the second belief of radical inclusion or being seen, which is also going to require us to cede power and make the invisible visible, which then overlaps with process as product or foreseeing, which is speaking to the future. So we hope that this gives you more ideas to think about. And if you would head back to your participant notebook and go ahead and reflect on the question. Liz, can you pull up the next? Perfect, thank you. How does the equity meets design, or sorry, design meets equity framework impact your social justice or your design plan? So go ahead and take a minute, what sparked for you, and we'll come back together then. All right, go ahead and wrap up whatever thoughts you have for this particular moment.
All right. Thank you so much for all of the reflecting that you've been doing and thinking and considering. We know that that was a lot of content. So now it's time to connect with some humans and talk about it. So we are going to give you at least 10 minutes, possibly a little bit more, to go back to breakout rooms. I'll take a turn to share. And we ask that you share your design principle, which is from number 1 in your participant notebook, an idea that you had from number 2 in your participant notebook, an idea that was sparked by at least one of the frameworks, which would be number 3 to 5 in your participant notebook, and then build on what others share. Feel free to dive into conversations and make suggestions and brainstorm. And then optionally, feel free to take notes on any insights that you're having as you discuss with your colleagues. So as you've explored, these frameworks encourage a lot of internal work for the designer in terms of building our self-awareness, in terms of recognizing oppression, acknowledging privilege, and making the invisible visible. All right, so Brittany is going to set up breakout rooms for you, and then you will be able to just click the blue button to join.
And friends, it was our intent to stick with the same breakout room so you could go back to the same people and chat. We have had a number of people trickle out. So I am going to move a couple of you to make sure that you actually have someone to talk with. So Kanisha and Linda Knox, I'm going to put you in a different room so that you are not sitting in a little Zoom room all by yourself with nobody to talk with. You should have a slew of people back in about 8 seconds. It's so creepy fun to see like who's talking in the breakout rooms from the host perspective, but it's just nice for us to know that like you're sharing, and for us sharing is the basis of learning. So that's great.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope there were some great discussions happening in your breakout rooms.
So we want to, as we close up, revisit our goals and make sure that we have met those with you. Our first goal was to identify strategies for integrating social justice when planning learning experiences. From our perspective, we've done that. We hope that is the case for you. To identify tools for recognizing my place, our place, and role in promoting social justice. To identify ways and promote social justice and equity through learning design. To develop encouragement and a network for this work. We hope that you have some names and emails or LinkedIn accounts and invites ready, and to develop our understanding of the intersection of learning experience design and social justice.
All right, so what we shared today is designed and intended for you to share and share again. This is a lot to take in an hour, and we absolutely recognize and appreciate that we can only scratch the surface of social justice in this experience. We are so grateful for the designers, educators, activists, and organizations whose work informed this workshop, and we would encourage you to explore those on your own because they are deserving of much more time than we had today. Those resources can be found here on this slide, as well as in your participant notebook for you to explore. And again, hopefully continue to grow and add to as you expand your learning experience design and social justice practice. So we want to thank you for joining us today. But first, in the quick links section of your participant notebook, you will find a link to create a certificate of participation for this session. As you continue your social justice work, we ask that you please reach out to us via email if we can ever help at any time at malxdegree@msu.edu with feedback, questions. We're happy to connect. And we wanted to thank you for your time with us today, for all the sharing that you've done. And just so that you're aware, this is part of a workshop series, and there are other workshops that we'll be hosting, and you can pay attention to those on our social media if you want to follow us. And again, feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Thank you so much, and we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.